Hi guys, my name is Ko. I am a longtime MMO player and a big fan of old school MMOs, not so much these days. And there's a reason for that. I get a lot of questions about this all the time, like, why did you like EverQuest so much? What is EverQuest? How do I play it? And more importantly, why don't you play any MMOs these days if you only play the old ones? So what I'm gonna do right now is show you guys a little bit. I'm gonna show you what EverQuest is. We're gonna make a new character. We're gonna start playing it, and we're gonna show you guys really what this game is. So let's get started. So first of all, full disclosure, EverQuest is not like MMOs you've played in the past. EverQuest is much more about just killing enemies. There are quests in EverQuest, but they're not nearly as prevalent as in other games. So you're gonna see in this game, it's a much more kind of relaxed situation. You don't kind of have that pressure to get to the next quest hub and get to the next area and do the next thing. You kind of do everything at your own pace. So let's go ahead and we'll make a character real quick. I'm gonna go over the classes and we'll go from there. So the first thing you do in this game is you pick a race. Now, races in this game are kind of huge because not only does that dictate what classes you can pick, but it also dictates where you start in the world, and traveling's a big deal, and what other races are KOS to you. Now, the thing in this game is they do not pull any punches. If I were to roll an ogre, I know a real looker, right? Yeah. If I were to roll an ogre, I'm an evil race. If I were to spend the 30 plus minutes it might take me to get to a human city, the guards would one-shot me on sight. That's just because everyone hates ogres. So that's the same with trolls. That's very similar with dark elves. And so it's important when you pick a race that you keep in mind, you need to be careful because KOS, which means kill on sight, is a very big deal in this game. And the guards that guard cities will almost always one-shot you. So it's pretty crazy. So we're gonna go ahead and pick human to start with. And that's this character here. Now, the big thing with this, you can go ahead and pick your appearance. There's obviously not a lot. It's as basic as it gets. This is a 20-year-old game. But what is really important is your class. So right now, we're playing on a progression server. Now, what a progression server is it's a server that starts like the game did in 1999. And then after X amount of weeks, it releases an expansion in a much more accelerated rate than you would have gotten like if you were to do EverQuest when it actually came out. So on the server we're playing on, which is Agnar, the rate at which players get the expansions is actually 12 weeks. So every 12 weeks, a new expansion comes out. It starts at base vanilla, which is what is right now, and then Vishan comes out, and then Velios, and then Lucklin, and then Plains of Power, and then our particular server is stomping on that expansion. Now there's like 16 expansions for this game right now, and they're actually still making expansions, weirdly enough. But this particular server is kind of, it's as a progression server, it's kind of a throwback. And like I said, it actually stops on the 4th expansion, Plains of Power, which is great. And I'll get into that later. So anyway, what do you do first? The first thing you do here is you pick a class. So you've got bards, which are melee DPS, great group buffs. Beast Lords you can't pick yet. They're in a future expansion. Berserkers are in a future expansion as well. Paladins, or clerics, clerics are the main healer. They are the big healer. There are other classes that you can play that will heal, like a druid or a shaman, but clerics are where it's at. If you are a healer, or if you want to play a healer, cleric is where you go. Moving down the road, we have druid. A druid is a healer, damage dealer, and a high utility caster, which is pretty awesome. So druids are kind of seen as some of the most versatile, but they don't do anything really, really well. So sometimes it's a little hard to find groups as a druid. However, there's this thing called kiting, which druids do exceptionally well. So they can actually do some pretty serious solo play. And that's rare. Most classes in this game cannot solo. But some classes include the druid, the class I'm playing, the necro, the magician. They're actually really good at soloing. So, or they can be if you learn how to do it properly. So druid's a great first class to pick. You're gonna have a little bit of trouble finding groups, but a very versatile class. Enchanters. I'm actually gonna speed this up a little bit because I could seriously sit here and talk about classes for the next, like 3 hours. Enchanters are the CCers. They control the fight. They pick which mobs are asleep. They pick which mobs are awake. They debuff them. They have damage. They can charm pets. Very versatile, not very high damage, and definitely one of the harder classes to play, but Enchanters are absolutely necessary in high-end groups. You will not have trouble finding a group as an Enchanter, and but again, pretty difficult. Magicians, pet class, magical pet class. Basically the combination of a pet class and a nuker. That is a magician. They can also summon items, which can be very useful for later on. But a magician, a great solo class, a very pet-centric class, and a lot of damage. Monk, melee DPS that can feign death, mainly known as pullers. They can actually not only do a lot of damage, but they can somewhat tank a little bit. And like I said, they are the pulling class with feign death. Also have a lot of tricks, a self-heal. They have a little kind of interesting armor mechanic where the less armor they wear, the more AC they have. It's an interesting class, a little bit techy, but a lot of fun to play. The Monk is actually what I've been playing in Pantheon, interestingly enough. Necromancer, this is what I'm playing. Necromancer is a very fun class, very good to solo. Again, not really great for grouping because there are better options, but Necros are the masters of dots, death, and pets. They also have a lot of utility later in the endgame because they have a spell that lets them transmit some of their mana to other classes. So they become known as mana batteries in high-end rating. But, you know, that's okay. So Necromancer, another great starter class. Very good soloers. You can do fear kiting, root rotting, or you can just do straight up pet tanking, although that becomes a little bit less viable later on. But really good and a solid class. Paladin. One step under warriors for tanking. Paladins are a combination of a tank class and a cleric. They have some healing spells, they can buff a little bit, they have a little bit of utility with the cleric spells, but they're mainly a tank and they're designed to be tanks. Rangers. Rogues. Rogues are the highest melee DPS class in the game. They have backstabbing ability, which is a giant kind of melee damage hit from behind. They also have a lot of tricks to keep aggro off them, including hiding during combat, which can help keep aggro off them. And yeah, very solid class. I actually mained a rogue in Everquest back in the day, and when I played on the Ragefire just about a year ago. And yeah, pretty good class. Shadow Knight. Shadow Knight is a combination of a warrior and a necromancer. They have a very weak pet, they have some interesting pulling mechanics, and they get some spells from a necro. However, they are not as good of a tank as warriors, but they're a great tank for leveling up, and they're excellent off tanks, which you really need for raids. Very, very versatile and solid class, and a good pick if you want kind of a tank with a twist. Warriors, the tank of Everquest. If you want to be the tank, if you want to be the one with the mob on you, if you want to be the one taking the hits, you are a warrior. The definition of a slab of meat that just keeps every mob on them that's not mezzed. Very solid class, and also since the expansions, a little bit harder to play these days. You can get items you can use, these discs to keep aggro. They also have taunts and stuff that go off, but a very good class and a good starting place for any tank. And then finally, we have wizards. Now, wizards are the spell damage dealers. They have a lot of nukes. They have different elemental nukes. They've got small nukes, they've got big nukes, they've got mana regen, they've got some good shielding capability. They are the magic damage dealer, and extremely, extremely powerful. They get the strongest spell in the game that's currently in called Ice Comet, and it is a heavy hitter. It does a huge amount of damage. So yeah, wizards, very, very strong, but important to mention, very weak. Wizards are wizards are one of the things that started the term glass cannon. So they can do a lot of damage, but they get killed really easily. Soloing is not a big option. So yeah, and then finally we have Rangers. Now, Rangers in Everquest Vanilla are not quite as powerful as they're going to be. Rangers become a lot more powerful in the next couple expansions. You hear me joke a lot about Rangers because they're in this weird in-between area. You've got warriors, and then you've got pure classes like necros, clerics, and druids. A shadow warrior is a plate-wearing warrior necro. A paladin is a plate-wearing warrior cleric. A druid is a medium armor-wearing warrior, or a ranger is a medium armor-wearing druid. And if you notice, there was a very significant difference there. Rangers do not wear plate armor. So what Rangers are is they're this weird, they're supposed to be an off tank and they can do some tanking, but they can't wear plate armor and they have druid spells. So they're in this kind of weird little corner where they're kind of, yeah. The problem with the Ranger is every other class does something better than them right now. That changes in the next few expansions, but right now pretty much every class does something better than a Ranger. Once you get 50 and you get geared, Rangers become much more viable as a DPS. But in the very first expansion, how we're playing now, I do not generally recommend Rangers for a first character. You really kind of got to know what you're doing to play a Ranger. You got to build them right. You got to know how to play it right for them to be very viable. So that's where we are. So anyway, let's go ahead and pick a class. I'll pick Monk. Nah, actually, let's pick a spellcasting class. Let's pick Druid. Let's go with Druid. Okay, so we picked our race and we picked our class. Let's pick a Halfling Druid because that's a great way to get started. You have 2 more quick options to pick, and these are very important. So make sure that you're not. Sometimes this can dictate like the difference between getting a quick invite to the guild and having to wait 2 hours. So yeah, the first is deity. Now, what deity you recommend or what deity you worship can have some in-game stuff that goes with it. Not a lot though, but sometimes can also pick where you spawn. So it can be important when you pick your deity. And then second, you have you pick where you spawn. Now here as a halfling, we only can pick Rivervale, but if you pick things like, let's say a human monks, depending on who they, well, actually it's not human monks, is it? I thought it was one of these guys. We could probably do it with, let's see. There's a bunch of different ways that you can, like here. Okay, here we go. Here's a good example. If I am a cleric that worships Bertoxulus, I start in Kinos, which is on the west side of the world. If I were to worship Erolsi Mar, then I start in Freeport, which is on the right side of the world. Those 2 cities are an hour-plus journey apart. So knowing where you start your character can be a big deal. So for instance, the guild right now, our guild, is mainly around Freeport. So if you're looking for a quick invite to the guild, then you'll probably want to get over to Freeport. So little stuff like that can make a big difference. It can. So we're going to go ahead and pick Halfling, Druid, Enterworld. Kinos is Sony EQ backwards. Yeah, isn't that cool? All right, so this is Everquest. Now, back in the day, we did not get all these fancy draggable UI things. This is all brand new. Back in the day, we had a static window with a little tiny gameplay window on it. It was like watching a bad streamer. But these days, we have this full interface. We can do whatever we want with. So before we start, we're going to go over a few quick things. This right here is your main health, mana, and stamina. This is what you're going to want to watch when you're fighting. You've got a standard group window. You've got your hotkeys and hotbars down here, and then you've got a main chat and other chat. Now, you are most likely going to want to completely change your UI around. Like, I put all my stuff on the left-hand side. I like to make it left justified. Some people like to spread it out all over the place. It really, whatever you want to do, you're good to go. So, a couple really important things to mention. Not only can you make new windows if you want to, but by right-clicking on them, you can go down to filters and easily decide what goes where. So if you want a window, for instance, that's only your guild, the people you talk to, which is a tell, and your group, boom, I just did that. So now this chat window will only have that stuff in it, and you see how all this stuff is just spamming away down here? Nothing will get missed down there. You could also have one window for tells or one window for guild, whatever you want to do. You can do that kind of stuff. Also, hotkeys. Hotkeys kind of start basic. They just kind of load up what you have. This is my spell gems up here. So we're casting a spell on ourselves real quick, Skin of Wood. But it also gives a whole lot of macros, like this right here will open up your spell book. You can see what spells you have. Sneak and hide, these are skills that halflings start with. Not every race does. Every race starts with some skills. They can't usually get them all the way up as high as you would if you had it as a class skill. But like, for instance, we're a druid. Druids do not get the hide ability. But as you see, I have sneak right here and hide. That's because I'm a halfling. Now, a rogue gets the hide ability. But since it's a class skill, the rogue can train it up to like 300, something incredible. Us, because it's a racial skill, I think we can only train our hide to like, what, chat, 50? Something, it's tiny. Like, racial skills are cool and they can be really useful, but if there's a class skill that it's based on, the class skill is going to trump it in every aspect. So that's kind of how that works. So anyway, I don't want this video to get too long, so we're going to dive real quick into, okay, I made my character, what do I do? This is what you do. You get 50. That is the main goal of EverQuest. The main goal of EverQuest is to get the max level, which is 50. However, how you get there is what makes it fun. Some people like to make static groups and get there as fast as possible. Other people like to explore and really take their time and just play the game. That's the way that I did when I played back in the day, and that's one of the reasons EverQuest was so special to me. But yeah, it's really however you want to do it. A couple quick notes, real quick. Moving around in this game is pretty tough. So there's 2 tips I want to give you. First of all, if you hit V, scroll down here. This is all alternate advancement stuff. This is stuff that's going to come in a later expansion that we can't use right now. But there is one very important skill in here called Origin that you can, apparently we don't get it yet. Maybe you get it at level, you get it at level 5. So at level 5, we're going to get an ability in here called Origin that lets us warp back to our bind point, or not our bind point, warp back to our starting point, which for us is probably going to be in that little house you just saw. It will warp us back here with a 30-minute cooldown. So every 30 minutes, whenever you want, you can warp back to your starting city. That is a huge, huge thing. Back in the day, you just had to run your ass back to your city every time you wanted to. So these days, Origin is huge. Also, what you'll want to do is you want to go to Google and you want to Google EverQuest Map Packs. EverQuest Map Pack. And this goes for everyone. If you're playing EQ, you want to do this. This right here, EQ map files, Brew Walls EverQuest maps. You want to click on this. You want to download this and follow these really easy instructions. And what that's going to do is that is going to give you some of the most fleshed out in-game maps there are. This is an in-game map. Now, of course, it looks kind of ridiculous when it's zoomed out, but you can zoom in and it becomes very clear exactly what's around you. Now, not only does this help you get in and out of cities and move around, but there's also an ability down here called Find that you can click on. And Find pulls up a list of every single NPC in your zone that you can then find what you need and go directly to them. So, for instance, let's say I wanted to start learning the pottery trade skill. Well, here's pottery supplies. I just click on that. I get this nice red line directly to where I want to go. And in front of me in the game world, I get this snaking orange translucent thing that leads me right to where I need to go. Very useful stuff for new players. Okay, so now that you know how to get around the map, how to find your way to places, and you know about Origin and the hotkeys, what do you actually do? So now that you're here, what do you do? Every starting zone usually has a new player area. This one's is called Misty Thicket. So what we'll do, for instance, is we want to find a zone. So we don't want to go to Kithagor because we'll get completely destroyed in there, but we do want to go to Misty Thicket. So we're going to make our way. We can see it's real easy. Just kind of go straight here all the way over, which is what we're doing now. And really, the entire game is fighting. That's one of the things I love about this game. It's actually pretty simple. It's deep, no question. There's a lot to this game. But in essence, it's actually a pretty damn simple game. You fight your way up through level 1, 2, 3, all the way up. Now, every spell or every class gets all sorts of things each level, and they used to be for casters, for instance, that you got spells every 4 levels, but now you actually get them every level. And you can Google if you need to know where you can buy your spells, because you can't always buy your spells in every city, and also what level you get them. But yeah, That's basically EverQuest. So what you would do, for instance, is if you wanted to start leveling, you would come out here. You would find enemies that are your level. Enemies that are blue or white are good targets for soloing, especially earlier. So we see this guy right here. We can click on him. That white circle means he's white. But another thing you can do in this game is hit the C button, and that'll con him. And if you look right here, it'll actually say, like, you can click on him, consider him. A moss snake regards you indifferently. It looks like an even fight. That's a white mob. So then we can come up to him, hit Q to start auto-attacking. That's going to start the basic auto-attack process. That just goes and goes and goes. And as a caster later on, I will not use this. Casters endgame do not melee. They will get killed. But early level, it's okay. So we'll sit here, get this guy down. It's very, very frequent in this in this game where if mobs are low health, they will run. So keep that in mind. And then we kill him. That is the first mob killed of this druid's career. And he will basically do that all the way to 50. However, there's a whole grouping mechanic to get into. There's bosses, there's camps, there's loot. There's like, this is barely the surface, but that's basically how it goes. Quick note about looting in the game. This window is going to look a little bit different when you get into groups. But real quick, just to explain a little bit about what you're seeing. In this game these days, you do not walk up to a corpse and loot it. All looting is done automatically. So what you're seeing right here is the loot window. So the way that it works is these buttons right here. If I just wanted to loot the item, I could click this and loot it. If I wanted to leave it, I could click that and leave it. But this is the stuff that really shines. What clicking this will do will mean that any time the item drops ever, I always want a need on it. What this button does is every time the item drops, I always want a greed on it. Once you do always need or always greed enough times in an area, you basically never have to loot again. Because every time you assign always need, always greed, or never, then you are basically telling the game, hold these settings permanently. So if I say always greed on both of these items right here, and then I go kill another moss snake, if he dropped the same items, that loot window wouldn't even pop up. It would just happen. So, yeah, that's kind of how it works. And once you, like, basically the way the game works, you generally want to solo until about level 4, anywhere between level 4 to 10, you generally want to solo. And then at that point, you want to start typing /LFG on. And when you see that little LFG after your name, that means that any group all around the world, if they do who all LFG druid 1, oh, look at that. There's co-test right there. But let's say I was on my Necro. Let's say I was on my Necro in an amazing group, and we were just about to lose our Enchanter. Well, obviously we don't want the group to stop, but we need another Enchanter. So what we would do is who all ENC, and let's say between levels 33 and 40. And then we want to make sure they're LFG. Well, Mesmatic is a 33 Enchanter who's looking for group in Guck Bottom, and Secretive is a 35 Enchanter in Mistmoor looking for a group. And then we could just send either of them a tell and say, hey, you want a group? Want to come play with us? And then that's how you find more people. You can also just type /LFG, and that brings up the LFG window, which lets you kind of do a bunch of stuff. But to be honest, I prefer it old school. I like doing it all through the commands and stuff like that. So I think I've given you enough to start this game. A lot of you probably heard everything I just did, and you're like, man, this game looks, pretty slow. I don't really know if it's for me. It's probably not in that case. This game is not for everyone. This game is a game that really kind of just lets you kind of zen out and just kind of take it at your own pace, do what you want to do, and take your time. Me personally, I absolutely love this game. I grew up talking to hundreds of people in this game, had meaningful relationships with people all over the world. I played this game for 4 years straight as a kid and literally spent more time in this world than the real world. So for people like me, I mean, not only do I love this game, but when I play it, it's like coming home. So that's one of the big reasons I love it. And I try to be upfront about that. I have a lot of nostalgia with this game, as well as a lot of other people out there. We have that nostalgia too. And this is one of the reasons we're so excited for an upcoming game called Pantheon, because they're attempting to kind of reboot that nostalgia into the next generation. Hopefully to a new generation, which can then pick it up. But yeah, that's really about it. So if you have any questions about this game and you're watching this on YouTube later, feel free to drop by the channel. I may not be playing EverQuest, but we're always happy to talk about it and answer any questions. I also may make more videos down the road, kind of like how to group in EverQuest, how to find a group, how to do really anything that you guys have questions with about in game. And what I'd really like to show you down the road is what raiding is like in this game. Because raiding in this game is a different flavor of beast from many other MMOs. It's a lot of fun, and would love to see you guys for that. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this first video. If you guys have any questions, again, just let me know, and see you guys next time.